Hello there, everybody. Really excited to be chatting with you today. And I've got the very fabulous Rosie Letts with me. Rosie is amazing. She's a nutritionist of 15 years or more. And she's so invaluable to us as a brand because she does the most incredible videos, talks about her products. You've probably seen her on her timeline. So good morning, Rosie.
Good morning, Catherine. Lovely to speak with you.
Well, I'm so delighted to be chatting today because we're talking about menopause and it's menopause month. And there's so much more awareness now. And I just felt it was really valuable because you've got all this experience to just ask a few questions about what you find and what you feel would be most relevant to people that are maybe approaching perimenopause, going through it now, and actually going through the menopause. Because it's not just physical, it's emotional awareness too that I think we need to make people aware of. So what I'd like to ask you is, well, how do you feel women can approach this point of their life positively?
Yeah, fantastic. So I think touching on Menopause Awareness Month, it's just so good that we are starting to have these conversations more and more in the last few years, because what I have noticed is that women often feel like almost blindsided by perimenopause. They feel like it's come out of nowhere. The symptoms hit. They're often cognitive initially, so they often start off with symptoms like brain fog, anxiety, fatigue, sleep disturbance. And the questions I get asked the most is, what's going on and why has no one told me that this is going to happen? So just kind of the fact that we're having these conversations, I think is going to be invaluable for just so many women. Um, the symptoms can hit quite dramatically, but actually I think it's really important to understand that perimenopause is a completely natural and normal hormonal transition, just like puberty, and it doesn't actually happen all that abruptly. Hormones start to decline usually in the mid-30s, and this process can go on for a decade or longer. So once we start to understand why these symptoms that we're experiencing are happening, and also what we can do to support, we should be able to really, really smooth the journey. And I think whilst we can't, without medical intervention, HRT, which can be valuable for a lot of women, but we can't always influence and prevent our hormones from falling. But our hormones don't exist in isolation. So the way that we're experiencing these hormonal changes is hugely influenced by factors that we can control. So things like our blood glucose and our insulin sensitivity, things like our liver detoxification, things like our gut health. And if we focus on really laying good foundations, we can actually experience perimenopause in a much, much more positive way. So we've got this beautiful window of opportunity to actually lay really solid foundations now, and I'm talking to women who are starting to experience these changes, and then they're going to reap the benefits for decades and decades to come. So it's a bit of a reframe, but I like to try to think about this hormonal shift as, how we can recalibrate and reshape rather than viewing it as, oh, our bodies are going into decline, which I think is often the message that women have heard.
Very much so. But also, while that's going on as well, we've also got the natural aging processes going on, which people very often forget about. They think it's all the
Yes,
menopause, but
yes.
then how do you help people deal with that side of things?
Yeah, again, and I think it is quite difficult to distinguish between natural aging and perimenopause. The two overlap, but they absolutely are distinguishable. Um, Again, we can't stop aging. We can't prevent the natural aging process, but we really can influence how well we age. And there is a lot that we can do through nutrition and exercise and stress management that will help us to age well. And we'll talk more about that. I think particularly when our estrogen falls, but progesterone as well, we often see a acceleration in the natural aging processes. And a lot of that is because estrogen has a very protective effect on many of our body systems. So it, protects cardiovascular health, helps to keep cholesterol levels in check. Estrogen is sort of by nature anti-inflammatory, so it can keep inflammation down. And a lot of women, as progesterone declines and the hormonal changes set in, if they don't think about their diet and their lifestyles, they can start to become less metabolically flexible. So they can start to gain visceral fat, fat around the middle, which again is very, very inflammatory. So it can create a bit of a perfect storm, a cascade, if you like, where yes, we're going through a hormonal transition, but also our natural aging processes really accelerate quite quickly. But we can intervene. So, and particularly with things like cardiovascular health, bone health, skin health, by introducing the right nutrients, by using our muscles, by making sure we've got the right macronutrients to keep our muscles healthy, our skin healthy, we can really, really slow that process. So the hormonal decline doesn't have to have such dramatic influence, if you like, over aging.
That's really wonderful information.
Mhm.
And you mentioned vascular health. It was interesting.
Yes.
I was talking to an air stewardess at the weekend, and she said, "Oh, yes, I have high blood pressure, but I don't worry about it." I'm like, "But particularly in your job, you really
Yeah.
need it, because as we go through the menopause, and she said the estrogen levels have an effect before we go through menopause, perimenopause, they actually make the blood vessels more elastic. But once we get to that point, you can get arterial stiffness, which can cause blood pressure problems. I think so many people choose to ignore it. They don't get checked out for it. But I think that's something I'd really like to make people aware of, because I was guilty of that. And I think many people don't think about the blood pressure once, because so many other things are going on. So that's invaluable. And the other thing that I feel is so important is the sleep side of things. Because if we're getting a good night's sleep, and obviously hot flushes can stop that and so on. So there's lots of things that people can sort of take on board to help prevent sort of flushes. I'm only saying help. But sleep is just so important, because if we're sleeping, if we're resting, then the body's repairing itself.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't help that perimenopause and menopause tend to arrive at a point in women's lives where things can often already be very busy and really quite stressful. And so often it will take women a while to even realize that the way that their sleep is changing is being influenced by their hormones. But like I said, hormones do not exist in isolation. And it does require some discipline, and it does require some lifestyle change. But if we do look at our diets and we make sure that our blood sugar levels are regulated throughout the day, and if we do take stress management more seriously, and if we do make sure we're exercising and well hydrated, and supplements definitely play a role to keep cortisol levels in check, and to make sure we're not depleted in certain minerals like magnesium, which is so important for sleep. If we do those things, women notice that their sleep might not be exactly how it was in their 20s, but it's much, much better. So I think it's very easy to blame menopause. But actually, there are multiple factors that are at play. And ultimately, we're all on the same side. We all want to improve these symptoms. So it's looking at where we do have the power to intervene, which things we can change, rather than focusing on things that are happening to us and that we might not be able to change.
Yeah, that's so very true. And the thing is, at that age, sort of mid-40s, 50s, very much in between, you've got teenage children that you're
Mm,
about after, you may be
mm,
looking after elderly grandparents, as you say, is taking that time to
yeah.
actually look after yourself. And
Mhm.
also, you know, very often we're eating the food that we think the family needs, and you
Yes.
might be eating for men, and you've got loads of heavy protein and so on. What
Yeah.
food options do you think are good to choose at this point in your life?
For women who are going through perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'll start off by saying I think the whole thing can be so confusing for women because uh, often we're bombarded with advice nowadays, which is frankly quite conflicting.
Yeah.
So many women come to me and they say, well, I've been told that I should be fasting, or I really need to be low carb, or lots of sort of rules are often put in place. Um, let's think about what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to keep hormone levels balanced, we're trying to reduce inflammation, we're trying to support the gut health, and we're trying to protect, as far as possible, our muscles and our bones. So for me, it's all about focusing on the foundations. For the vast majority of women, cutting out food groups will not be a good idea. We need to make sure that there's a balance. And for most women, this looks like a Mediterranean style,
Totally.
unprocessed as far as possible, balanced diet. Um, Eating enough protein really is important. I know it's a little bit of a hot topic at the moment, but for good reason. When our estrogen starts to decline, estrogen protects our muscle fibers. As it starts to decline, we can start to lose muscle more rapidly. And that's one of the main reasons that women tend to gain weight at this point in life. But it also affects our insulin sensitivity and lots of other things. So maintaining, not necessarily building big muscles in the gym, but maintaining good skeletal muscle health is of optimum priority. So making sure we're getting roughly a palm-sized portion of protein with every meal is important. That can be eggs, good quality dairy, like yogurt, it can be meat, fish, or it can be plant-based protein. Um, Making sure we're getting a really, really good variety of fruit and vegetables and herbs. So I say, eat the rainbow. I know you talk about this a lot as
Yeah,
well, Catherine. It's just
definitely.
making sure the best place to get our antioxidants and our polyphenols and our fibers is through our diet, and these plants protect every system in the body. So really colourful, getting enough protein. Please don't be scared of fat. So many women, again, it's sort of decades of diet culture. So many women are concerned about the calories in the fats that they're eating, but we need these fats more than ever in midlife. So make sure you're getting some olive oil, some nuts and seeds, oily fish, avocado. These healthy fats are crucial for keeping your skin healthy, eyes healthy, all of our mucous membranes. We need that fat, let alone cardiovascular health. And then gut health is a really, really hot topic. Most of our hormones and neurotransmitters are in some way either produced or processed by our gut bacteria. And we also know that about 70% of the immune system is made up of these microbes that live inside our guts. So, you don't all need to rush out and do stool testing and things like that, but making sure we're getting a variety of good quality fiber every day. Most people don't eat enough fiber, so 30 grams is what we should really be aiming for. And trying to get some kind of fermented foods or probiotics on a regular basis is going to
Yeah.
help to protect our gut health. Making sure we're hydrated. Don't need to tell you about that. I think we're all really clued up now, but making sure we're getting electrolytes if we need them, we're drinking enough water. So I focus there. I focus on what we should be eating. I have to say as well, though, there is a lot in our diets which is doing us no good at all. So these ultra processed foods, they're not being sold to help our health. They're being sold to make profits for big companies. So anything that you don't know what's in it, can't pronounce it, I'd really encourage you to reduce. Ultra processed foods, we believe, one of the major drivers of inflammation in the body, and inflammation is essentially aging. Alcohol, we can't tolerate alcohol past our 30s and 40s in the same way as we could when we were younger. So again, it's a really good idea to take stock and to think, is alcohol serving me now? What, you know, potentially was it ever, and can I cut back? And that's about it, I think. If people get those key fundamentals right, if you know, it's quite a lot to focus on, but it should be quite manageable. For most women, that's all they really need to do. Just focus on
Just
balance.
preparing food from fresh as much as
Yeah.
possible, and it doesn't have to take a long time,
Mm,
I mean, okay, if you throw something in the microwave, that's going to take no time at all, but to actually, put some fish on to grill or in the oven,
mm,
like just stir fry some vegetables, it
mm,
hardly
mm,
takes any time at all. It's just rethinking things. And then
mm.
also gradually introducing it to the family as well. Some of them might
Absolutely.
be a little bit resistant initially, but most families can actually adopt that way of eating.
Well, our taste buds change. So one of the reasons that you often hear about food noise, when people talk about food noise, what they're actually really referring to is an addiction to ultra processed food, because they are highly, highly addictive. And so you might not want to go completely cold turkey, but if you can remove these foods as far as possible from your diet and from your family's diet, they won't want them anymore. And I understand, I've got teenagers. I understand you can't eradicate these foods from teenagers' diets, but you can make sure that when they're at home and when you're preparing food, they're coming to expect non-processed, just simple food that you've prepared. Um, and it really recalibrates the way that we think about foods and the foods that we're actually drawn to as well, I think, when we do that. I understand it can sound daunting to people if people aren't used to cooking at all. The other thing I was going to say is it really doesn't have to be hugely expensive. So cooking, particularly with plant-based proteins, beans, lentils, pulses, chickpeas, and mixing those proteins with seasonal vegetables is often a lot cheaper than actually buying the ultra-processed food that people are used to, the convenience foods. So it can be done. It's a shift, and it won't happen overnight.
No, that's great. It's really, really valuable information. And
Mm.
you supplements before. As you know, we've got female hormones. And I was very reluctant to create it originally because everybody's
Why?
so individual,
Mm,
and one thing doesn't fit all. So we don't pitch it as, right, this is what you need, this is everything. We do an awful lot, about talking about menopause symptoms, talking about foods to eat,
mm,
talking about sleep patterns and everything else. So we do a lot of support around it. But I know you use, or you do recommend it with some of your clients.
mhm,
I'd
mhm.
love to hear your thoughts on it and why you feel it's so beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, as well as with all of your formulas, they've been designed very carefully and thoughtfully to work with the body's natural processes. And supplements, I will say, supplements don't work well unless you are also looking at your lifestyle and your nutrition. So it's wonderful that you do focus so much on education as well. The reason I love this blend, it's a very comprehensive blend of nutrients, vitamins, essential minerals, B vitamins, and botanicals to really focus on optimizing the areas that we talked about being so important when going through a hormonal transition. So nutritional support for energy. So we need B vitamins, we need zinc, we need the hormonal synthesis nutrients, if you like, to help us build those hormones naturally. You've got adaptogens, so ashwagandha and maca and rhodiola, isn't it, in this one?
Rhodiola.
Yeah. So Adaptogens can be really, really powerful when we're trying to prevent big cortisol surges. Cortisol is essentially the enemy of progesterone. So when we have chronically high cortisol, it depletes progesterone really quickly. And progesterone declining is the first sign of perimenopause. We need progesterone to help us to feel calm and balanced. So using adaptogens is a really gentle strategy to help with all those lifestyle factors that we're also trying to implement to keep our cortisol levels nice and steady. So it can really help with sleep. We've also got phytonutrients. So again, trying to kind of mimic with red clover and hops, we can start to sort of very gently mimic the effects of estrogen in the body, which is really valuable for women who are struggling with the fluctuation of estrogen, because estrogen doesn't decline steadily, it comes up and down all over the place. So having phytoestrogens can really help balance that transition. And then crucially, and I think this is a feature of all of your products, it's focusing on inflammation. So calming that inflammation systemically and at a cellular level. So trying to mitigate some of the natural aging effects that could be accelerated by those declining hormone levels. So I think it's a really sensible helping hand, I suppose, for women who need some extra support.
Definitely, that's great. I'm thrilled that you do recommend it. It's fabulous. And I know also, we spoke about hydration. The ionic electrolytes in hydration are brilliant to help the brain fog, as is Regenerate. We have so many customers that take Regenerate because they find that it gives them more energy, but it also helps to keep the brain ticking over in the afternoon. And then finally, obviously, there's collagen shots,
How
which
could we not mention collagen shots?
well, yes, and I can't imagine a day without collagen shots. But it's not only good for the skin, it's good for so much more in the body as well. Muscles, for your joints, your digestive system. It's a complete product, really, that helps to support the menopause.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I do often get asked about collagen and whether it's worth the hype, whether it's a bit of a gimmick. I think there are so many options that are now available for women, and it can feel a bit overwhelming. But, I always just say we get to a point where our natural collagen stores are declining rapidly. And so anything that we can do to replace this incredibly abundant, totally natural amino acid, it's going to help, and whether it's going to improve your skin health or help protect your bones or support, it doesn't really matter. We know that collagen's declining, and most of us can't get anything like enough from our diets. So it makes sense to introduce a collagen shot if you have the facilities to do so. Most women do now.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you so much for chatting through things with me today. And I think, people that are watching this will find it so invaluable. And, how can the people actually find you? Because much as though we have lots of information on the website, if somebody wants to get in touch and would like to make an appointment, chat to you more, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, best way is through my website. So I'm Rosie Letts. It's rosielettsnutrition.com. There's loads of information on my website. Lots of useful articles, I hope, hundreds of recipes. And if people are interested in taking a more comprehensive look at their nutrition, potentially looking at supplements and potentially exploring sort of functional medicine a bit further, the best way to do that is to schedule a free call from the website, and we can just book in and have a chat and talk about how I can help.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
Lovely to speak with you as well. Bye.
Bye.